They gave them 4 hours to evacuate. 4 hours to abandon a world that had stood for 3,000 years. What the Vakrin didn't know, what nobody in the galaxy knew, was that humanity had been preparing for this exact moment for 40 years. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's go back to the beginning, to the lie, to the comfortable fiction that kept the galaxy peaceful for generations. To Commander Caitlin Mercer standing on the bridge of the UESS Resolute, watching her screens with the practiced eye of someone who knew that peace was always temporary. She was 35 years old, third generation military. Her grandmother had flown atmospheric fighters back when Earth still thought it was alone in the universe. Her father had commanded the first human ship to make contact with the Galactic Council. And Caitlin had spent 12 years learning the one simple truth that nobody wanted to hear: aliens were not your friends. The bridge hummed with the quiet efficiency of a warship at peace. 63 crew members at their stations. Holographic displays showing a star system so far from Earth that the light from Sol would take 73 years to reach it. And in the center of it all, standing with his hands clasped behind his back, like a monument to military tradition, Admiral Marcus Reeves, 58 years old, gray at the temples, 3 medals for valor earned in skirmishes that most people had forgotten, 22 years of perfect service, following every rule in the galactic warfare conventions without question. He believed, truly believed, that honor meant something. That civilization could be measured by how you treated your enemies. Caitlin had stopped believing that a long time ago. Commander Mercer, Reeves said, his voice carrying that patrician accent that marked him as old Massachusetts money. Status report. Caitlin glanced at her tactical display. The Vakrin battle fleet had been holding position for 3 hours now just outside the gravity well of New Horizon. 20 ships, not enough to be a serious threat, but enough to be concerning. No change, sir. They're maintaining formation at 40,000 kilometers. Weapons cold. Shields at standard cruise configuration. Any response to our hails? Negative, sir. They're not even acknowledging our presence. Reeves frowned. That was unusual. The Vakrin Empire prided itself on protocol. They were supposed to be the most civilized species in the council. When they wanted something, they negotiated. They filed diplomatic protests. They certainly didn't just show up in someone else's system and go silent. Perhaps their communications are malfunctioning, Reeves mused. Caitlin bit back her first response. Instead, she pulled up a secondary analysis. Sir, with respect, I've been watching their formation patterns. They're maintaining perfect triangular geometry. That requires constant course corrections and active coordination. Their comms are working fine. Then why won't they talk to us? Because they're waiting for something. The words hung in the air between them. Reeves turned to look at her, his expression unreadable. Explain. I've been reviewing Vakrin tactical doctrine. They're a hierarchical species. Nobody in that fleet makes a move without approval from higher authority. If they're not responding to us, it's because someone told them not to. Or perhaps they're simply being cautious. We are after all positioned between them and their objective. Caitlin wanted to argue, wanted to point out the 17 subtle indicators that something was wrong. The way the Vakrin ships had arrived at staggered intervals instead of all at once. The way they'd chosen a position that gave them clear sensor readings of both the human fleet and the colony world. The way their weapons were cold, but their power signatures suggested fully charged capacitor banks. But she knew Reeves wouldn't listen. He never did when it came to questions of honor. So instead she said, "Yes, sir," and turned back to her console. Behind her, Lieutenant Garrison Hayes leaned in close. 28 years old, fresh from the academy, still young enough to believe that doing the right thing mattered. "Commander, you really think they're planning something?" Caitlin kept her voice low. "I think that when someone shows up with guns and then refuses to talk, you should assume the worst. But the conventions mean nothing if only one side follows them." Hayes looked troubled by that. Good. He was smart enough to be troubled. Maybe he'd live long enough to see his 29th birthday. The hours crawled by. Caitlin drank coffee that tasted like recycled petroleum. ran diagnostics on weapon systems that had been fully functional for 3 months straight, watched the Vakrin fleet do absolutely nothing, and thought about her brother. Jack Mercer was 2 years younger than her, which made him 30. He'd done his mandatory military service, earned an honorable discharge, and immediately retired to the farthest agricultural world he could find. New Horizon, 2.1 million people, most of them farmers. Wheat fields stretching to every horizon under a sun that burned orange instead of yellow. Jack had a wife, Emily, redhead, stubborn as granite, made the best apple pie Caitlin had ever tasted. They had 2 kids, Emma, age 6, who wanted to be an astronaut when she grew up. Lucas, age 9, who collected rocks and could name 37 different types of sedimentary formations. Every week, like clockwork, Jack called. Told her about crop rotations and rainfall patterns and the community potluck where Old Man Henderson had gotten drunk and tried to sing opera. Told her about Emma learning to ride a bicycle. About Lucas finding a fossil that might actually be valuable. Told her about a life so far removed from military starships that it might as well have been happening in another universe. The last call had been 3 days ago. You should visit, Jack had said. The harvest is coming in. Emma drew a picture of your ship. She wants to show it to you in person. I'll try, Caitlin had replied, knowing she wouldn't, knowing that her duty was here in the black, watching for threats that everyone else insisted didn't exist. Katie, Jack had said, using the nickname only he was allowed to use. You can't save the whole galaxy. Sometimes you just have to trust that people are good. She hadn't known how to tell him that trusting people was how you ended up dead. The alarm cut through her memories like a knife. Contacts, Hayes shouted. Multiple new contacts emerging from hyperspace. Caitlin's fingers flew across her console. On the main display, space itself seemed to tear open. 40 new Vakrin ships materialized, their arrival so precisely coordinated that they appeared within the same 3-second window. Battle stations. Reeves ordered, his voice calm despite the sudden threat. All hands to combat positions. Sound general quarters. The bridge transformed. Klaxons wailing. Crew members sprinting to reinforced stations. Blast shields sliding into place over viewports. Caitlin felt the familiar adrenaline surge, the knife-edge clarity that came with imminent combat. Total of 60 Vakrin vessels, she reported. Mass drivers charging. Missile tubes flooding. They're going hot, sir. Broadcast on all emergency frequencies, Reeves commanded. Inform them that they are violating Galactic Convention 12 by threatening a civilian population center. Demand immediate withdrawal. Caitlin sent the message. Waited. Nothing. No response, sir. Reeves's jaw tightened. Then we'll have to make them listen. All ships, defensive formation, Delta 7. Position ourselves between the enemy and New Horizon. If they want to reach that colony, they'll have to go through us. The human fleet moved with practiced precision. 23 warships, significantly outgunned, but better trained and better positioned. They formed a wall of steel and determination between the Vakrin armada and the world behind them. For 10 minutes, nobody moved. Then the Vakrin fleet accelerated. Here they come, Caitlin said quietly. What followed was 6 hours of the most brutal conventional warfare Caitlin had ever experienced. The Vakrin came at them in waves, testing their defenses, probing for weaknesses. Human point defense systems worked overtime, tracking and destroying incoming missiles. Energy weapons carved through the black, painting the void with hellish light. Caitlin lost herself in the rhythm of combat. Target acquisition, fire solution, launch, track. Her hands moved across holographic controls with the muscle memory of 12 years' experience. Around her, the bridge crew worked with the same grim efficiency. 3 human ships took damage. The destroyer Relentless lost its port shield generator. The cruiser Defiant had a hull breach in engineering, 7 casualties contained and survivable. The frigate Resolute, their own ship, took a glancing hit that buckled armor plating on deck 6. But they held. More than held. They pushed back. Caitlin's tactical brilliance was on full display. She anticipated enemy maneuvers before they happened, positioned human ships to create devastating crossfire patterns, exploited every microscopic flaw in Vakrin formation discipline. By the fourth hour, the enemy had lost 19 ships destroyed and 9 crippled. Their neat, orderly attack formations had dissolved into desperate improvisation. By the sixth hour, they were beaten. Incoming transmission. Hayes reported, his voice hoarse from shouting orders. It's the Vakrin flagship. They're broadcasting surrender on the standard frequency. Every head on the bridge turned toward Admiral Reeves. The old man stood perfectly still, his weathered face unreadable. Caitlin could see him weighing options, considering possibilities. This was what he trained for his entire life. This was the moment where honor and duty converged. All ships cease fire, Reeves commanded. Acknowledge the surrender and prepare to receive their formal terms. Deploy rescue shuttles for survivors in escape pods, medical teams to stand by for wounded. Caitlin's stomach dropped. "Sir," she said quietly, "request permission to speak." "Granted." "Sir, their formation is wrong." Reeves frowned. "Explain." She pulled up a tactical overlay, highlighting the Vakrin ships. "Look at their positions. They're maintaining geometric precision even while broadcasting surrender. That's not standard procedure. When you surrender, you go, so minimal power, you drift, you signal distress. They're not doing that. They're holding perfect station keeping. Perhaps their cultural practices differ from ours, Commander." "Sir, I've studied 32 different alien species surrender protocols. Nobody maintains combat formation while surrendering. It defeats the purpose. Or perhaps they're simply being cautious. We did just destroy a third of their fleet." Caitlin felt frustration building in her chest. "Admiral, with respect, something is wrong. My tactical analysis suggests..." "Commander." Reeves's voice was gentle but firm. "I understand your concerns, but we have clear surrender signals being broadcast on emergency frequencies. The Galactic conventions are explicit. When an enemy surrenders, we are obligated to cease hostilities immediately and render aid. That's not a suggestion. That's the law. The law didn't save New Horizon when the Zarketh raided them 6 years ago. And we responded to that raid within the bounds of civilized warfare. We captured the responsible parties. We held trials. We followed a due process. We buried 3,000 colonists." The bridge had gone silent. Everyone was listening now. Reeves met her eyes. His expression was sad, almost pitying. "Caitlin, I know you're cautious. I know you've seen things that make you question whether honor matters. But if we abandon the conventions the moment they become inconvenient, then we're no different from the barbarians we're fighting. We have to be better. We have to show that civilization means something." Caitlin wanted to scream, wanted to grab him by his perfectly pressed uniform and shake him until he understood that idealism got people killed. That the enemy didn't care about rules. That you couldn't negotiate with someone who'd already decided you were acceptable casualties. But she was a commander in the United Earth Space Service, and Admiral Marcus Reeves was her superior officer. "Yes, sir," she said. The human fleet powered down weapons. Shields remained active. They weren't complete fools, but the aggressive targeting locks disengaged. Rescue shuttles launched vectoring toward the clouds of debris where Vakrin escape pods drifted. Caitlin watched her displays with growing dread. The Vakrin formation didn't change, didn't drift, didn't power down. "Sir," Hayes said nervously, "I'm reading some strange energy signatures from their main formation. It's almost like they're charging capacitors, but that doesn't make sense if they've surrendered." "Sensor glitch," Reeves suggested. "We took damage to our sensor array. Lieutenant ran a full diagnostic." But Caitlin was already moving. Her fingers danced across controls, pulling up gravitational sensors, electromagnetic scanners, every passive detection system she could access. And that's when she saw it. Behind New Horizons' moon, the small barren rock that orbited the colony world space was bending. "Hyperspace emergence!" She screamed. Time seemed to slow down. 47 more Vakrin ships materialized from behind the moon. They'd been there the entire time, hiding, waiting, watching the human fleet exhaust itself in 6 hours of brutal combat. Watching them move to rescue positions. watching them lower their guard in the name of honor and mercy and all the noble lies that dead civilizations carved on their tombstones. The ships were different from the battle fleet, bulkier, less maneuverable, built for a single purpose. Caitlin recognized their profiles from intelligence briefings, from nightmare scenarios that strategists had wargamed but never seriously believed would happen. Planet crackers. 47 missile carriers, each loaded with weapons that violated every convention, every treaty, every agreement that supposedly kept galactic warfare civilized. All ships intercept. Reeves roared, his calm finally shattering. Engage those carriers. Maximum burn. But they were out of position. That was the genius of it. The Vakrin had spent 6 hours maneuvering the human fleet exactly where they wanted them, away from optimal intercept trajectories, with shields oriented the wrong direction, with point defense systems depleted from hours of sustained fire. The planet crackers launched 47 missiles, each one carrying enough destructive force to shatter a planet's crust, each one targeted at New Horizon. Caitlin's hands moved faster than thought. She was coordinating 3 destroyers, rerouting power from damaged systems, calculating intercept vectors with the cold precision of someone who knew that math was the only thing standing between life and annihilation. Intercept solutions uploaded to the fleet. Shiva said, her voice somehow steady despite the screaming in her head. 3 missiles in range, firing. 3 contacts disappeared from her display. 44 remained. Around her, other ships were firing. The Defiant got one. The Valiant got another. 5 missiles destroyed in total. 42 continued their inexorable descent toward New Horizon. New contacts emerging. Hayes reported, his voice breaking. Vakrin battle fleet is re-engaging. They're targeting our point defense systems. Of course they were. The surrender had been a lie. All of it had been a lie. They'd never intended to stop fighting. They had just wanted the humans vulnerable. Caitlin watched the tactical display with the detached horror of someone watching a train wreck in slow motion. The remaining human ships were fighting desperately, but they were outnumbered, out of position, and running on empty reserves. 1 more missile destroyed. 41 remained. She could do the math. Time to impact 18 minutes. Current intercept rate 1 missile every 3 minutes. They would destroy maybe 5 more before the rest hit New Horizon. 36 planet crackers. More than enough. Admiral, she said quietly, we need to evacuate New Horizon. Every ship, every shuttle. Get as many people off as possible. Reeves was staring at the display, his face ashen. They wouldn't. They couldn't. The conventions explicitly prohibit. Sir, the conventions don't matter if everyone's dead. He seemed to age 20 years in that moment. Broadcast emergency evacuation protocols. All civilian transports are to load maximum capacity and make for orbital rendezvous points. We'll provide escort as best we can. Caitlin opened the emergency channel, her voice carried to every communication device on New Horizon's surface. This is Commander Caitlin Mercer of the UESS Resolute to all New Horizon residents. We have an extinction level threat inbound. Estimated time to impact 16 minutes. This is not a drill. Proceed to designated evacuation centers immediately. I repeat, this is not a drill. Her personal comm chimed. Priority 1. Family channel. She almost didn't answer, almost let it go to voicemail. But some part of her, the part that was still Katie instead of Commander Mercer, needed to hear his voice one more time. Jack! Katie! He was breathing hard, running. In the background she could hear Emma crying. Katie, what's happening? The whole planet just got an alert. Something about missiles. She closed her eyes. Jack, listen to me. You need to get to the evacuation center. Right now. Don't pack anything. Don't grab keepsakes. Just run. How much time do we have? 15 minutes. Silence on the other end. Then, that's not enough time, is it? Jack, the nearest center is 20 minutes away. Even if we run. Even if we drive. His voice was eerily calm, accepting. It's okay, Katie. You did everything you could. Jack, please. Tell Emma I love her. Tell Lucas. His voice broke. Tell them their old man tried to give them a good life. Tell them. The signal cut out, not because he'd hung up, because the electromagnetic pulse from the first missile impact had just fried every communication system on the southern continent. Caitlin stared at the tactical display, watched the red icons rain down on her brother's world, watched the seismic readings spike as planet crackers burrowed through crust that had stood for 3 billion years, watched the temperature graphs skyrocket as magma vented into the atmosphere. New Horizon wasn't a planet anymore. It was a funeral pyre for 2.1 million people who trusted that the galaxy's rules meant something. The bridge was silent, except for the soft pinging of alarms. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. They just watched a world die in real time. The whole process took 23 minutes. Continent-wide earthquakes, measuring 9.8 on the Richter scale. Volcanic eruptions along fault lines that had been dormant for millennia. Oceans boiling away into superheated steam. Atmosphere igniting as oxygen-rich air combusted under impossible temperatures. And everywhere in the cities, in the farms, in the small communities where neighbors knew each other's names, people were dying. 2.1 million of them, including Jack Mercer, age 30, who'd only wanted to grow wheat and raise his kids in peace, including Emily Mercer, age 28, who made the best apple pie in 3-star systems, including Emma, age 6, who'd drawn a picture of her aunt's starship, including Lucas, age 9, who'd found a fossil just last week, including Admiral Reeves' daughter, Captain Elena Reeves, age 32, who'd retired from military service precisely because she was tired of watching people die. All of them gone. The life sign monitors told the story in cold objective data. 2,100,000 biosigns, then 1,800,000, then 900,000, then 100,000, then 0. Sir, Hayes whispered, the Vakrin fleet is jumping to hyperspace. Caitlin looked up. The ships that had just committed genocide were casually departing, their engines glowing with the characteristic blue shift of FTL preparation. They weren't even hurrying. Why would they? What were the humans going to do? File a formal complaint. The battle fleet that had surrendered was jumping too, all except the ones too damaged to move. Those ships were already broadcasting actual surrender signals now, real ones, desperate ones. And floating in their escape pods, the Vakrin soldiers that human crews had been rescuing. They were smiling. Caitlin could see them on the rescue shuttle cameras, smiling. Some were laughing. They'd known. All of them had known what was about to happen. The surrender had been theater, and they'd played their parts perfectly. Admiral Lieutenant Hayes said, his voice shaking. What are your orders, sir? Reeves stood frozen at the center of the bridge. His daughter had been down there. He'd watched her biosign wink out on the monitors, watched the planet that held her body crumble into fragments. Sir, Hayes repeated. Caitlin stepped forward. She felt strange, disconnected, like she was watching herself from somewhere outside her body. Bring the fleet to high orbit. Recover all our shuttles. Begin damage assessment and casualty reports. But the Vakrin surrender is irrelevant. Her voice was ice. We follow galactic conventions. Remember, we accept surrenders. We treat prisoners humanely. We follow all the rules that they just proved don't matter. She walked to Admiral Reeves, put a hand on his shoulder. The old man didn't respond. Just stared at the main display where New Horizon had been. Sir, she said quietly, we need you. He turned to look at her. His eyes were empty. I killed them. I followed the rules and I killed them. No, sir. The Vakrin killed them. I had the shot. You warned me. You told me something was wrong and I ignored you because... He laughed a broken sound. Because I believed in honor, in civilization, in rules. Caitlin guided him to his command chair. He sat heavily, looking 20 years older than he had that morning. Commander Mercer, he said hoarsely, you have operational command. Do whatever needs to be done. She returned to her station, pulled up casualty reports. They made for grim reading. 3 human ships destroyed during the second engagement. The destroyer Ajax, the frigate Leonidas, and the medical ship Florence Nightingale. 2,700 personnel lost, plus 2,100,000 colonists. The numbers didn't feel real. They were too big. The human mind wasn't designed to comprehend loss on that scale. So instead, Caitlin thought about Jack, about the last time she'd seen him in person 5 years ago, when she'd attended his wedding. He'd been so happy, so full of hope for the future he was going to build. And she thought about Emma's drawing, the one she'd never get to see. And she thought about Lucas's fossil, whether it had been valuable after all. And she thought about all the things she'd never say, never do, never experience with the family she'd taken for granted. Commander, Hayes was at her elbow. Incoming transmission from Earth, Priority Alpha. It's the Defense Council. Caitlin straightened her uniform, wiped her face, surprised to find it wet. Put them through. The holographic display shimmered. Secretary General Thomas Brennan appeared, his lined face grave. Behind him, she could see the Defense Council chamber in Washington, D.C., filled with admirals and generals and politicians. Commander Mercer, Brennan said, we've received your preliminary report. Confirmed 2.1 million civilian casualties. Confirmed, sir. And the Galactic Council has been notified. They called an emergency session 6 hours ago. I'm told they're discussing sanctions. Brennan's expression darkened. Sanctions. Yes, I'm sure that will bring great comfort to the dead. He paused. Commander, I need you to understand something. What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest level. It stays on that bridge. Understood? Understood, sir. The council is meeting. They're issuing strongly worded statements. They're condemning the Vakrin actions in the harshest possible terms. And they're doing absolutely nothing that matters. Brennan leaned forward. Commander Earth is tired of watching our people die while the galaxy tut-tuts and passes resolutions. The vote has been taken, 8-1 in favor. Humanity is withdrawing from the Galactic Warfare Conventions effective immediately. The bridge went deadly silent. Sir, Caitlin said carefully, what exactly does that mean? It means that Admiral Reeves is being recalled. You're being promoted to provisional command of the strike fleet. And in 6 hours, Earth is going dark. No communications, no diplomatic channels, nothing. Because for 40 years, Commander, we've been doing something that nobody in the galaxy suspected. Sir, Brennan smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. We've been preparing for war, real war, not the civilized games that the Council plays. We've been building ships, developing weapons, training every single human over the age of 18 in combat doctrine. The freighters you see warships, the mining stations, production facilities, the colony transports troop carriers. He gestured and the display behind him changed, showed ship after ship, hundreds of them, thousands. For 40 years, Brennan continued, humanity has been pretending to follow the rules while building the most terrifying military force this galaxy has ever seen. We did it because we knew we've always known that eventually someone would break faith. Someone would show us that honor was a luxury we couldn't afford. And now, Caitlin asked, now we show them the cost of teaching humanity that civilization is a lie. Brennan's expression was granite. Protocol Fenrir is active. In 6 hours, every human world will know what happened at New Horizon. And in 72 hours, the real fleet emerges. The transmission ended. Caitlin turned to look at Admiral Reeves. The old man was staring at nothing, lost in grief. She thought about Jack, about Emma and Lucas, about 2.1 million people who'd believed that the galaxy's rules would protect them. Commander, Hayes said quietly, what do we do? Caitlin pulled up her tactical display, started running calculations. Time to Earth, time to refit, time to plan. We survive, Lieutenant, and then we make sure this never happens again. How? She looked at him, at the fear in his young eyes, at the uncertainty. By teaching the galaxy something they've forgotten, Lieutenant, that humanity only follows rules when everyone else does. And when you break that agreement, she pulled up the casualty list. 2 million to 100,000 names. She'd read every single one before this was over. When you break that agreement, you don't face lawyers and sanctions. You face something much worse. What's that, Commander? Caitlin thought about her brother's last words, thought about Emma's drawing and Lucas's fossil, and all the quiet, peaceful lives that had been snuffed out because someone decided the rules didn't apply to them. Survivors, Lieutenant. You face survivors who will do absolutely anything to make sure it never happens again. Outside the viewports, the debris field that had been New Horizon continued its slow, inexorable drift into the void. And 6 hours away, Earth was about to show the galaxy what humanity looked like when it stopped pretending to be civilized. The galaxy learned about New Horizon within hours. Not from official channels, those had gone dark the moment Earth activated Protocol Fenrir. No, the galaxy learned because 217 human merchant vessels simultaneously broadcast the same footage across every communication frequency they could access. Footage of a planet breaking apart. Footage of 2.1 million people dying while following the rules. Footage of Vakrin soldiers miling in their rescue pods. And then after 6 hours of silence that terrified every government from the core worlds to the outer rim, Earth spoke again. The message was simple. We're done playing. Commander Caitlin Mercer stood in the briefing room of the UESS Valiant watching the tactical display with cold calculation. 3 weeks had passed since New Horizon. 3 weeks of retrofitting, rearming and recruiting. 3 weeks of Earth's shipyards working at capacity they'd hidden for 4 decades. The room was crowded with officers she barely recognized, new faces, serious faces, people who'd been teaching history at civilian academies and who now wore tactical officer insignia, people who'd been flying cargo routes and who now commanded strike wings. Admiral Reeves sat in the corner, a ghost of the man he'd been. They'd let him keep his rank, nobody had the heart to strip him of that, but everyone knew he was finished. The old warrior, who'd believed in honor, had watched his honor get 2.1 million people killed. That kind of failure didn't leave room for second chances. At ease, Caitlin said, though nobody had come to attention. Formality seemed pointless now. She gestured and the tactical display expanded, showed the Vakrin border, showed fleet positions, showed the massive military infrastructure that the enemy had spent centuries building. 3 hours ago, she began, our reconnaissance drones detected a Vakrin transmission. They're mobilizing everything. Every ship, every station, every defensive platform. They know we're coming. How many ships? Someone asked. 200 at the border, another 300 in reserve. And they're recalling colonial fleets. Best estimate they can field 800 combat-capable vessels within 2 weeks. Murmurs ran through the room. 800 ships. Against humanity's, 50-60. The official records showed that Earth had exactly 47 military vessels. Caitlin smiled. It was not a warm expression. Lieutenant Commander Hayes, if you would. Garrison Hayes, no longer a nervous lieutenant, promoted twice in 3 weeks, stepped forward. He'd aged in those weeks. They all had, but there was steel in his eyes now that hadn't been there before. The official count is 47 vessels, Hayes said. That's what the Galactic Council knows about. What they don't know is that for 40 years, every civilian ship humanity built had a secondary purpose. It pulled up schematics. A standard cargo freighter, grey, boring, utterly unremarkable. This is the merchant vessel Steady Hand, registered as a Class 3 cargo hauler. Carries agricultural products, primarily wheat and soybeans, between Earth and the colonies. The schematic changed. The outer hull peeled away, revealing the ship's true nature. This is also the Steady Hand, missile cruiser, 48 launch tubes, full electronic warfare suite, armor plating hidden behind civilian-grade hull panels. She can go from cargo hauler to warship in 90 seconds. Hayes pulled up more ships, hundreds of them, each one with the same dual nature. We've been building these for 4 decades. Every freighter, every passenger liner, every mining vessel, all of them can fight. All of them have crews trained in combat operations. The Council thought we were a small, peaceful nation that barely maintained a navy. He smiled. We're actually the most heavily militarized species in galactic history. We have 3,400 combat-capable vessels, and every single human over 18 has completed mandatory military service. We didn't hide our military behind civilian society. We are a military. All of us. The room erupted. Questions, exclamations, shocked disbelief even from officers who should have known better. Caitlin let it run for 30 seconds, then raised her hand for silence. Our intelligence also intercepted something else, she continued. The Vakrin aren't stopping with New Horizon. They've prepared 40 more planet cracker strikes, targeting at every major human colony. 40 worlds, 43 billion people. The room went silent. The missiles are already in position, hidden throughout human space. They're waiting for authorization from the Vakrin High Command. One code word and 43 billion of us die. Someone in the back. Captain Jennifer Blackwood, formerly a cargo pilot, now commanding a strike carrier, spoke up. Then we have to hit them first, take out their command structure before they can give the order. That's the plan, Caitlin agreed. But there's a complication. Our best intelligence against this suggests the missiles are on automated triggers. If the Vakrin command network goes dark, they launch automatically. It's a dead man's switch. The Vakrin leadership doesn't trust their own people not to surrender, so they've guaranteed mutual destruction. Then what do we do? Hayes asked. Caitlin pulled up a new tactical overlay, showed 40 scattered points throughout human territory, showed the calculated flight times, showed the nightmare math of trying to intercept them all. We split the fleet. 3,400 ships, 40 targets. That's 85 ships per missile. We position at each colony. We wait for the launch authorization and then we intercept before impact. And if we miss even one, we don't miss. The silence in the room was absolute. Commander Admiral Reeves spoke for the first time, his voice hoarse. You're talking about splitting our entire fleet. If the Vakrin attack while we're dispersed, then we lose. Yes, sir. But if we don't intercept those missiles, we lose anyway. This is the only play that saves our people. Reeves looked old, broken. And after we've saved our colonies, what then? Caitlin met his eyes. Then we make sure they can never threaten us again. That's genocide, Commander. No, sir. Genocide is what they tried to do to us. What we're planning is deterrence. We're going to show the galaxy that the cost of breaking the rules is too high for anyone to pay. She turned back to the assembled officers. You have 6 hours to prep your vessels. 40 teams, 85 ships each. We've already calculated optimal positioning. When those missiles launch, we'll be ready. Questions? Captain Blackwood raised her hand. Commander, once we've intercepted the missiles, what are our rules of engagement with Vakrin forces? Caitlin thought about Jack, about Emma and Lucas, about 2.1 million people who trusted that civilization meant something. There are no rules anymore, Captain. We win. That's the only rule. We protect human lives and we eliminate threats. Use any means necessary. The galactic conventions are suspended. We are at total war. She paused, then added quietly. But Captain tried to minimize civilian casualties where possible. We're not doing this to become monsters. We're doing this so we never have to again. The fleet dispersed within 8 hours. Caitlin took personal command of the group defending Terra Nova, one of humanity's largest colonies. 7 billion people spread across 3 continents. She positioned her 85 ships in a defensive sphere, sensors, scanning constantly, weapons primed and ready. And she waited. The wait lasted 16 hours. Then across 40 star systems, simultaneously, space ripped open and planet cracker missiles emerged from hyperspace. Contact! Hayes shouted from tactical. Single missile bearing 270 Mark 35. Time to impact 4 hours 17 minutes. All ships weapons free, Caitlin commanded. I want that missile dead before it gets within 1,000,000 kilometers of the planet. What followed was 4 hours of the most precise coordinated military operation in human history. 85 ships working in perfect synchronization, tracking a weapon that moved at a significant fraction of light speed. They used everything. Kinetic interceptors, tungsten rods, accelerated to 40% of light speed. Energy weapons, focused beams that could melt through armor in microseconds. Gravity disruptors, experimental weapons that literally bent space around their targets. The missile was destroyed 1,200,000 kilometers from Terra Nova. Caitlin allowed herself one breath of relief. Then, the reports started coming in from other fleets. Columbia Prime missile intercepted. Colony safe. New Boston missile intercepted, no wait. Correction. Missile broke through defensive line. Impact in progress. Her blood ran cold. Get me a direct feed from New Boston. The holographic display shimmered. She saw a world dying. Saw the same terrible process that had consumed New Horizon. Earthquakes, volcanism, atmospheric ignition. 3 billion people had 30 minutes to live. Next report, she said, her voice mechanical. Sanctuary colony missile intercepted negative. Breakthrough, impact confirmed. 2 billion dead. The reports continued. Most colonies were saved. The math worked. 85 ships could stop one missile if they had advance warning and proper positioning. But not all of them. By the time the last report came in, the casualty count stood at 5 billion. 5 billion human beings dead because they couldn't intercept every missile fast enough. Commander Hayes said quietly, "We saved 38 colonies. 38 billion people are alive because of what we did. And 5 billion are dead because we weren't good enough. We were outnumbered and outmaneuvered. We did everything. It wasn't enough." Caitlin stood from her command chair. "Recall all fleets. Rally point Sigma 7. We're going on the offensive. Commander, we should consolidate, assess damage." "No." Her voice was ice. "The Vakrin just murdered 5 billion more of our people. Now we show them what that costs." She pulled up tactical displays, showed Vakrin military infrastructure, bases, shipyards, training facilities. "We're going to dismantle their military, piece by piece, ship by ship, until they're incapable of threatening anyone ever again." Admiral Reeves stood slowly. "Commander, the Galactic Council will call this a war crime." "The Galactic Council can go to hell, sir. With respect." The human fleet now reunited 3,200 vessels after accounting for losses during the interception emerged at the Vakrin border exactly 48 hours later. The Vakrin border fleet was waiting, 200 ships in perfect formation ready to defend their territory. They'd been expecting a fight, a battle, something that fit within their understanding of warfare. What they got was annihilation. The human ships didn't maneuver, didn't form up, didn't broadcast warnings or demands or any of the civilized protocols that warfare was supposed to follow. They simply opened fire. Kinetic weapons traveling at relativistic speeds don't give you time to react. One moment, the Vakrin ships were in formation. The next moment, 60 of them were expanding clouds of superheated gas. The Vakrin fleet tried to respond, tried to return fire. But human ships were faster, more maneuverable, and equipped with defensive systems that seemed to violate physics itself. Energy shields that didn't just deflect incoming fire, they erased it, made it cease to exist. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, 180 Vakrin ships were destroyed. 20 were crippled and drifting. Exactly 0 had escaped. Human casualties, none. Not a single ship damaged. Caitlin watched from the bridge of the Valiant as the last Vakrin vessel broke apart. Around her, the crew worked in silence. There was no celebration, no triumph, just grim determination. "Commander," Hayes reported, "we're receiving multiple surrender broadcasts from the surviving vessels." Caitlin thought about New Horizon, about the Vakrin prisoners who'd smiled while a world died. Continue firing. Hayes turned to stare at her. Ma'am, you heard me, Lieutenant Commander. Continue firing. Ignore all surrender signals. Commander, that's against what? She stood walking to the main viewport. Against the conventions, the Vakrin surrendered at New Horizon 2, right before they murdered 2.1 million people. Do you want to fall for the same trick twice? These ships are crippled. They can't fight back. Then they shouldn't have started a war they couldn't finish. Hayes' hand hovered over his firing controls. Around the bridge, other officers watched the confrontation with sick fascination. This was the moment, the line they couldn't uncross. Lieutenant Paige Wilson, the youngest member of the bridge crew at 24, spoke up. Commander, my sister lived on New Boston. She taught elementary school. 30 kids in her class. They all died when the planet cracker hit. She looked at Hayes. Sir, I recommend we continue firing. One by one, the other officers nodded. Hayes closed his eyes, pressed the firing controls. 20 more Vakrin ships died. The survivors who'd been broadcasting surrender signals. The wounded who thought the battle was over. All of them. Executed in cold blood. The bridge was silent except for the quiet pinging of weapons systems cooling down. Caitlin returned to her command chair. She felt hollow inside, like something essential had been carved out of her soul and replaced with cold calculation. All ships, she broadcast to the fleet. Plot course for Sigma 7. We have another target. Sigma 7 wasn't a military installation in the traditional sense. It was the Vakrin Military Academy, where they trained officers, where future commanders learned the art of warfare, where the leaders who destroyed New Horizon had once been students. The academy was located on a small moon orbiting a gas giant in a system far from any major population centers. It housed 3,000 cadets at any given time, ages 16 to 24 in human equivalent years. They were children. Essentially, Caitlin stood in her ready room looking at the tactical data. The academy was lightly defended, 2 orbital platforms, a small garrison, nothing that could stop a human strike force. The door chimed. Come in. Admiral Reeves entered. He looked terrible, hadn't slept in days, hadn't eaten from what she could tell. Commander, he said, I'm asking you not to do this. The decision has been made, Admiral. They're students, children. Children who will become the next generation of commanders, who will learn the lessons of this war and spend the next 50 years preparing to fight us again. Unless we end the cycle here. Reeves sank into a chair. Caitlin, please. I know you're angry. I know you want revenge. But this isn't who we are. Isn't it? She turned to face him. Sir, you spent 22 years believing in honor, in civilization, in rules. And where did that get us? 7.1 billion dead. My brother, your daughter, all of them gone because we trusted that the enemy would follow the same rules we did. So we become them. We murder children. We ensure this never happens again. By becoming the monsters. Caitlin was silent for a long moment. Then, Sir, do you know what Emma's last words were? According to the recovered black box data from the Colony Communication Network, Reeves shook his head. She was in her school, teaching a class on Earth history. When the alert went out, she tried to get the children to the shelter. But it was too far away, so she gathered them together and she told them a story about humanity's first space flight, about brave explorers going into the unknown. Her voice cracked slightly. She died telling frightened children a story about hope, while the world burned around them. Reeves closed his eyes. Those cadets at Sigma 7, Caitlin continued. They're learning how to do what the Vakrin did to New Horizon. They're studying tactics and strategy and all the civilized ways to commit genocide. And in 20 years, they'll be commanding fleets, making decisions about which civilian populations are acceptable collateral damage. Then we capture the academy. We take them prisoner. We don't execute them. And if one of them becomes the next commander who decides humans are acceptable targets, if one of them grows up believing that breaking the rules was justified because they got away with it, how many more New Horizons do we allow before we admit that mercy has a cost? She walked to the viewport. Outside, the human fleet hung in space like a swarm of steel predators. Sir, you asked me on New Horizon if I wanted to fall for the same trick twice. I am asking you the same question. Do you want to show mercy to the next generation of our killers and hope they learn to be better? Or do you want to make sure they can't hurt us again? Reeves stood, walked to the door, paused. For what it's worth, Commander, I understand why you're doing this. I even agree with the logic. But understanding doesn't make it right. No, sir, it doesn't. After he left, Caitlin stood alone in her ready room for 10 minutes. Thought about Jack, about Emma and Lucas, about the choice between protecting the living and honoring the dead. Then she returned to the bridge and gave the order. All ships firing solution on Sigma 7 Military Academy. Saturation bombardment. Total destruction. Hayes executed the command without hesitation. 200 ships opened fire simultaneously. The Academy and everyone in it ceased to exist in 17 seconds. 3,000 cadets gone. Caitlin watched the tactical display clear, felt nothing. That was the worst part. She'd expected to feel guilt, remorse, horror at what she'd done. Instead, she felt only cold satisfaction. One less threat. One less generation of commanders who might someday decide that human civilians were acceptable casualties. Commander, Hayes reported. Incoming transmission, it's Galactic Council Arbiter Kellarn. Put it through. The insectoid alien appeared on the holographic display. Its mandibles were clicking with agitation. Commander Mercer, what you have done is an outrage. Those were students, not soldiers. They were officers in training, Caitlin replied coldly. The same academy that produced the commanders who destroyed New Horizon. We ended the cycle. You murdered children. No arbiter. We eliminated a military training facility. If you have a problem with that, I suggest you take it up with the Vakrin High Command. They're the ones who started targeting civilians. The responsible Vakrin officers have been arrested. War crime trials are proceeding. Too late and not enough. You had 3,000 years to enforce your conventions. You only started caring when human bodies were being vaporized. Kellarn's entire body shuddered. Commander, you must stop this. Your fleet is heading toward Vakrin Prime. Surely you are not planning to attack their homeworld. That would cross a line from which there is no return. Caitlin thought about that, about lines and returns, about civilization and barbarism. Arbiter, the Vakrin crossed that line when they cracked New Horizon while we were following your rules. We're just walking the path they showed us. She terminated the transmission. Commander, Hayes said quietly, what are we actually planning for Vakrin Prime? Exactly what the Arbiter fears. We're going to show them what happens when you teach humanity that civilization is a lie. The journey to Vakrin Prime took 3 days at maximum sustainable acceleration. 3 days for word to spread across the galaxy. 3 days for the Galactic Council to convene emergency sessions. 3 days for every species to watch and wonder what humanity had become. Caitlin spent those 3 days reviewing intelligence reports. Vakrin Prime was the heart of their empire. 14 billion inhabitants. The seat of government, center of culture, nexus of trade. If New Horizon was a peaceful farming colony, Vakrin Prime was the Vakrin soul made manifest. She also spent time reviewing the casualties from the 40 missile strike. 5 billion dead, broken down by Colony New Boston. 3 billion. Major industrial center, home to 60% of humanity's shipbuilding expertise. Sanctuary Colony 2 billion. Founded by religious groups seeking isolation. Their entire culture gone. 17 other worlds had been hit, but evacuated in time. Millions displaced, infrastructure destroyed, but the people lived. 38 worlds saved completely. The math was brutal. They'd saved 85% of the targets. By any objective measure, it was an incredible success, the largest coordinated defensive operation in military history. And yet, 5 billion dead. She kept coming back to that number. 5 billion people who'd been alive 3 days ago, who'd had families and dreams and futures, who trusted that she would protect them. Commander Dr. Evelyn Thornbridge entered the ready room without knocking. The medical officer had that privilege earned through 30 years of service and a complete disregard for military protocol. "Doctor, you haven't slept in 40 hours. I'll sleep when this is over." That's what worries me. Thornbridge sat without being invited. "Caitlin, I need to know something. When this is over, when the Vakrin are beaten, when the threat is eliminated, are you planning to come back?" "Come back from where?" "From wherever you've gone. Because right now you're operating like a machine. Efficient, cold, necessary. But machines don't make good commanders in peacetime." Caitlin was silent. "I knew your brother," Thornbridge continued. "Treated him once when he broke his arm during basic training. Stubborn kid, refused painkillers because he wanted to earn the pain. Sound familiar?" "What's your point, doctor?" "My point is that Jack wouldn't want you to destroy yourself getting revenge for him. He'd want, Jack's dead." The words came out harder than intended. Jack's dead. Emma's dead. Lucas is dead. 5 billion more are dead. And if I'd been faster, smarter, better at my job, maybe some of them would still be alive. "You can't save everyone, Caitlin." "No, but I can make sure the people who killed them never kill anyone again. That's all I have left, doctor. Purpose, mission. If I stop moving forward, if I let myself feel it all, I'll break. And I can't break. Not yet. Not while there's still work to do." Thornbridge studied her for a long moment. "Just promise me something. When this is over, when you've made the Vakrin pay, you'll let yourself grieve. You'll let yourself be human again." "I'll try." The doctor left, shaking her head. Caitlin returned to her tactical displays, studied Vakrin Prime's defenses, calculated casualties, made the terrible arithmetic of war, and tried very hard not to think about what she was becoming. The human fleet emerged at Vakrin Prime exactly 72 hours after the 40 missile strike. 3,000 ships materialized in perfect formation around the Vakrin homeworld. A sphere of steel and determination surrounding the planet like a cage. The Vakrin home fleet responded immediately. 400 ships, everything they had left after the border massacre. Older vessels pulled from reserve. Colony defense forces recalled to protect the home world, a desperate last-ditch defense of everything they held sacred. Caitlin watched them form up on the tactical display, watched them prepare to die defending their home. "All ships hold position," she commanded. "Do not fire unless fired upon." Commander Hayes sounded confused. "Open a channel to Vakrin High Command." The display shimmered. A Vakrian appeared, four-armed, crystalline skin eyes that saw in spectrums humans couldn't perceive. The Prime Minister based on the elaborate bioluminescent patterns across its thorax. "Commander Mercer," the alien said. Its translator rendered the voice as male authoritative. "You have come to destroy us." "That depends on you, Prime Minister. We will not surrender our home world. We will fight to the last ship, to the last citizen if necessary." Caitlin pulled up a tactical overlay, highlighted specific points on the planet's surface and in orbit. "These are your military command centers, your shipyards, your orbital defense platforms, your missile production facilities." She marked each one. "In the next 30 seconds, we're going to destroy all of them. You have 30 seconds to order civilian evacuations from these zones." The Prime Minister's bioluminescence flickered confusion she'd learned to recognize. "You're warning us. I'm not interested in massacring civilians, Prime Minister. Only in eliminating your ability to threaten my people. You have 25 seconds. To the alien's credit, it didn't hesitate. Gave rapid orders. Emergency broadcasts in Vakrian language flooded the planet's communication networks. When the 30 seconds expired, Caitlin gave the order. "All ships execute precision strikes. Military targets only. Minimize collateral damage." What followed was the most surgically precise bombardment in galactic history. Human ships targeting systems enhanced by 40 years of secret development fired on hundreds of targets simultaneously. Orbital platforms exploded. Shipyards melted. Common bunkers collapsed under kinetic bombardment. The Vakrin home fleet tried to intercept. 400 ships against 3,000. The math was brutal and obvious. The battle lasted 90 minutes. At the end, 300 Vakrian ships were destroyed. 100 were crippled and drifting. Not a single one had escaped to hyperspace. Human casualties: 12 ships damaged, 47 personnel wounded, 3 dead. The entire Vakrian military was effectively destroyed. Prime Minister, Caitlin said, reopening the communication channel. Your fleet is gone. Your military infrastructure is destroyed. You have no capacity to threaten anyone. Do you understand? The aliens' bioluminescence had gone dim. Defeat and resignation. Yes. Good. Now I'm going to explain how this works from now on. You will dismantle every remaining weapons facility. You will submit all military records for review. You will accept human observers to ensure compliance. And you will pay reparations to the families of every human killed in this war. And if we refuse, Caitlin pulled up new tactical data, showed it to the Prime Minister. It was a weapon, massive, 30 kilometers long, bristling with incomprehensible technology. This is a Helios platform, Caitlin said quietly. We have 7 of them, one for each of humanity's core worlds. They've been in deep space for 20 years. Nobody knew they existed. What do? They kill stars, Prime Minister. This one is positioned exactly 3 light hours from your sun. If you refuse our terms, I will activate it. Your sun will go nova. Vakrin Prime and everyone on it will have approximately 17 minutes to evacuate. After that, the radiation wave will sterilize every planet in your system. The silence on the other end was absolute. You're bluffing, the Prime Minister finally said. No species would build such a weapon. You're right. No civilized species would. But we're not civilized anymore, Prime Minister. You taught us that. At New Horizon, at New Boston, at Sanctuary. You taught us that rules don't matter, that civilians are acceptable targets, that surrender is just a tactic. She leaned forward. We learned the lesson. We built weapons that violate every convention. Planet crackers, sun killers, antimatter bombs that could crack continents. We built all of it, designed it, tested it, made it operational. Then use it, the Prime Minister said with a quiet dignity. Kill us all. Prove that you're the monsters we always feared humans would become. Caitlin looked at Admiral Reeves. The old man sat silently in his chair, watching her with hollow eyes, waiting to see what she would become. She thought about Jack, about Emma and Lucas, about 5 billion dead because she hadn't been fast enough. And she thought about what Dr. Thornbridge had said, about coming back, about being human again. No, Caitlin said. Commander. Hayes looked shocked. I said no, Lieutenant Commander. We're not activating Helios. We're not cracking their sun. We're not executing 14 billion civilians because their government made terrible choices. She looked at the Prime Minister. We built these weapons to prove we could destroy you. We're not using them to prove we're better than you. That's the difference, Prime Minister. That's what separates civilization from barbarism, not the ability to destroy, the wisdom to choose not to. The Prime Minister's bioluminescence flickered. I do not understand, Paul. You will. Surrender your military, accept our terms, and we'll help you rebuild. We'll send medical aid, food, engineering support. We'll show you that the power we wield, the terrible absolute power to end your entire civilization, is leashed by restraint. She stood from her command chair. That's the lesson you need to learn, Prime Minister. Not that humanity can destroy you. That we choose not to. The transmission ended. The bridge was silent. Then Admiral Reeves stood, walked slowly to where Caitlin stood, and saluted. Commander, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I was wrong about you. You're not a monster. You're what we needed. Someone strong enough to do terrible things and wise enough to know when not to. Caitlin returned the salute. I learned from the best, sir. You taught me honor. The Vakrin taught me pragmatism. Somewhere between those lessons, I found what we actually need, which is the will to be wolves when necessary, and the wisdom to be shepherds when possible. Hayes pulled up casualty reports from the engagement. Final count: 300 Vakrian military casualties. Civilian casualties from collateral damage estimated at 40,000. That's with precision targeting in an urban environment. 40,000 dead. Still terrible. Still a number that would haunt Caitlin forever. But not 14 billion. Not genocide. Not the monster she could have become. All ships, she broadcast to the fleet. Stand down from combat status. Maintain blockade positions. The Vakrin have 48 hours to respond to our terms. If they refuse, we'll revisit our options. Until then, we wait. The fleet acknowledged. 3,000 ships, each one a testament to humanity's determination to never again be caught unprepared. Caitlin returned to her ready room, sat in the darkness, and for the first time in 3 weeks, she allowed herself to cry. For Jack, for Elena, for 7.1 billion dead, for the 5 billion she hadn't saved fast enough, for the 40,000 Vakrian civilians who died today because war always killed the innocent, and for herself, for the woman she'd been 3 weeks ago who believed that following orders and doing her duty would be enough. That woman was gone. In her place was someone harder, colder, someone who could order the deaths of 3,000 cadets and not flinch, someone who could threaten to kill a son and mean it, but also someone who could choose mercy when it mattered. That would have to be enough. Outside her viewport, Vakrin Prime hung in space, wounded, beaten, but still alive. Still alive because humanity had chosen to let it live. That choice would echo through galactic history for generations. 48 hours after the ultimatum, the Vakrin Prime Minister broadcast an unconditional surrender. Caitlin Mercer watched from the bridge of the UESS Valiant as the transmission came through. The Prime Minister's bioluminescence patterns showed defeat, exhaustion, and something that might have been relief. "We accept your terms, Commander Mercer," the alien said. "Our military records are being compiled. Our remaining weapons facilities are being powered down. We submit to human oversight." There was a pause. Then, "I have one question. Ask it. Why show mercy after what we did? You had the power to end us. Your Helios platform could have destroyed our sun. You could have made an example of us that would terrify the galaxy for millennia. Instead, you offered to help us rebuild. I need to understand why." Caitlin thought about that question, about all the easy answers she could give: strategic necessity, moral superiority, the practical benefits of having a defeated enemy rather than a martyred one. But the truth was simpler and more complicated. Because someone I loved believed that civilization meant something, she finally said. He was wrong about a lot of things, but he was right that we have to try. We have to believe that we can be better than our worst instincts. She paused, gathering her thoughts. At New Horizon, you taught us that rules without enforcement are meaningless. So we enforced them. They showed you the cost of breaking faith. But if all we did was destroy, if we met your atrocity with our own genocide, then we'd just be proving that might makes right, that the only real law is power. The Prime Minister's crystalline skin reflected the light in complex patterns. Listening, understanding. "We're better than that," Caitlin continued. "We have to be. Because if we're not, if we become the monsters we're capable of being, then everything my brother died for becomes meaningless. And I won't let that happen." The transmission ended. Hayes approached her station. "Commander, what happens now?" "Now we make good on our promise. Get me a connection to Earth. We're going to need medical supplies, engineering teams, and about 10,000 people who know how to rebuild a civilization." "You're serious after everything they did?" "Deadly serious. Lieutenant Commander, the Vakrin are beaten. Their military is destroyed. Their threat is neutralized. What they need now isn't more destruction. They need to see that we meant what we said, that power and restraint can coexist." She pulled up logistics displays, started calculating what it would take to rebuild a homeworld's military infrastructure into something productive. Schools, hospitals, agricultural systems. "Besides," she added quietly, "we're going to need allies eventually. Better to have the Vakrin as grateful partners than resentful subjects." History is full of empires that conquered and then collapsed under the weight of occupation. We're not making that mistake. 6 months later, Caitlin stood in the ruins of what had been Vakrin Prime's largest military academy. The academy wasn't Sigma 7. That place was gone, vaporized in 17 seconds of human fire. This was the primary training facility located in the capital city, where senior officers had studied strategy and philosophy alongside tactical doctrine. Now it was being rebuilt, not as a military installation, as a civilian university. Human engineers worked alongside Vakrian civilians, clearing debris, laying new foundations, installing systems that would power classrooms instead of weapons. It was slow work, difficult work, but it was happening. Commander Mercer, she turned to find a young Vakrian barely adult by their standards approaching hesitantly. The translator had rendered their voice as female, uncertain. "I'm Admiral Mercer now," Caitlin corrected gently. She'd been promoted 3 times in 6 months. "How can I help you?" "My name is Kelris. I was a student at Sigma 7. Caitlin's blood ran cold. "I was on leave when your ships attacked it." Kelris continued her bioluminescence, flickering rapidly. Fear, grief, survivor's guilt. "My entire class, 347 of my friends, gone in seconds." Caitlin didn't know what to say. What could she say? "I'm sorry." That would be a lie. She'd ordered that strike knowing exactly what it would do. "I was just following orders." That had been the excuse of war criminals throughout history. So instead, she said, "I know." Kelris's crystalline skin seemed to crack slightly, an expression of pain. Do you know what it's like to have your entire world unmade, to come back from leave and find empty quarters, to realize that everyone you cared about died while you were away?" "Yes," Caitlin said quietly. "My brother lived on New Horizon, his wife, his 2 children. They died while I was following the rules that were supposed to protect them. So yes, I know exactly what that feels like." The 2 of them stood in silence for a long moment. "I came here to hate you," Kelris finally said. "To tell you what a monster you are, to make you understand what you took from us. You have every right. But then I watched you. For 6 months I've watched human ships arrive, not with weapons, with food, medicine, engineers. I've watched you rebuild what you destroyed. I have seen human soldiers working 16-hour shifts to restore our water treatment facilities. I have seen your medical teams treating Vakrian wounded with the same care they gave their own." Kelris moved closer. Her bioluminescence shifted to something Caitlin had learned to recognize as determination. "You could have killed us all. You had the power, the justification. After what we did, no one would have questioned it. Instead, you showed mercy. You proved that strength and compassion can coexist. And I want to understand how. I want to learn from you." "Learn what?" "How to be a guardian instead of a weapon." Caitlin looked at the young Bakrian, saw in her the same lost, broken expression she'd seen in her own mirror for months. Someone trying to make sense of senseless violence, trying to find meaning in survival. "It starts with a choice," Caitlin said. "Every day you wake up and you choose. Are you going to honor the dead by becoming what they feared, or by building what they would have wanted your friends at Sigma 7? What did they want to be? Defenders, protectors. They joined the military to keep our people safe. Then honor them by being that, not by seeking revenge, not by perpetuating the cycle, by actually protecting people, all people, even former enemies." Kelris was silent for a long time. "Then will you teach me what? Will you teach me how to be what you are? How to have power and not abuse it? How to—" She struggled for words. How to be strong enough to choose mercy. Caitlin thought about that, about all the reasons to say no, the dead cadets at Sigma 7, the bad optics of training a former enemy, the risk that she was wrong that Kelris would learn their tactics and use them against humanity someday. Then she thought about Admiral Reeves, about how he'd taught her honor even though she'd rejected it, about how those lessons mixed with hard pragmatism had created something better than neither alone. "Yes," Caitlin said. "Report to the Valiant tomorrow. We'll find a place for you in the training program." Kelris's bioluminescence flared bright joy, gratitude, hope. "Thank you, Admiral. I won't disappoint you." After she left, Caitlin stood alone in the ruins, thought about the strange mercy of the universe, that from the ashes of an academy she'd destroyed a student she hadn't killed, might become the future she was trying to build. That was either very wise or very foolish. A voice said behind her. She turned. Admiral Reeves stood there, looking better than he had in months. The grief was still there. It would always be there, but he'd found a way to carry it without being crushed. Probably both, sir. She'll tell her people everything we teach her, our tactics, our weaknesses, our secrets. I know, and you're okay with that. Caitlin looked at the old man. Sir, if we hide our strength, we build our security on secrets and fear. That works for a while, but eventually secrets leak and fear turns to resentment. I'd rather build our security on something stronger, which is respect, allies. A galaxy that knows we could destroy them but chooses not to because they've chosen not to threaten us. That's more durable than any weapon we could build. Reeves smiled. It was the first time she'd seen him smile in months. You're going to make a terrible admiral, you know. Admirals are supposed to be paranoid and cynical. Then it's good I'm still learning, sir. The real test came 5 years later. Admiral Caitlin Mercer stood in a ready room reviewing intelligence reports. The Protectorate had grown substantially. What had started as humanity's military had evolved into something larger. A defense force that protected any species against violations of galactic conventions. Not because they were paid, not because they received territory or tribute, simply because someone had to enforce the rules, and humanity had learned the hard way what happened when no one did. The door chimed. Come in. Captain Jennifer Blackwood entered. She'd earned her own command the UESS Retribution, one of the newest heavy cruisers. Admiral, we have a situation. The Kreller Union just used biological weapons on the Tarsus mining colony. Caitlin's jaw tightened. Casualties. 300 confirmed dead. Another 2,000 exposed. The bioweapon is some kind of a nerve agent. Victims describe excruciating pain before respiratory failure. It's designed to maximize suffering. Survivors. The colony was mostly automated. The 300 dead were scientists studying the local ecosystem. Civilians, non-combatants. The Kreller claim it was an accident, that a rogue military unit deployed the weapons without authorization. Caitlin pulled up data on the Kreller Union. They were a mid-tier power. 60 billion population spread across 15 worlds. Militaristic culture. They'd signed the revised Galactic conventions under pressure, but had been vocal about resenting human interference in galactic affairs. Where did the attack originate? Kreller Military Station Omega-3. We have solid intelligence. Chain of command traces directly to the Kreller High Command. So not a rogue unit. A sanctioned operation that they're now trying to disavow. That's our assessment, yes. Caitlin stood, walked to her viewport. The Protectorate fleet hung in space 200 ships at this location alone. Humanity had built something that New Horizons dead could be proud of. A force that actually defended people. Recall the fleet, she ordered. All ships. We're going to make an example. Admiral, the Galactic Council is requesting that we allow them to handle these through diplomatic channels. The Council had 3,000 years to handle things through diplomatic channels. How'd that work out for New Horizon? Blackwood nodded. Understood. I will relay the orders. The Protectorate fleet arrived at Kreller Union space 36 hours later. The Kreller home fleet responded immediately. 200 ships formed a defensive perimeter around their homeworld. It was a respectable force, well-trained, well-equipped. It wasn't enough. Caitlin opened a channel to Kreller High Command. This is Admiral Caitlin Mercer of the Terran Protectorate Force. Your government has violated Galactic Convention 6 by deploying biological weapons against the civilian population. 300 innocents are dead. You claim this was done by a rogue unit, but our intelligence proves otherwise. You have 6 hours to surrender your government for trial. Refuse and we will consider your entire military infrastructure legitimate targets. The Kreller Premier appeared on screen, a reptilian species with impressive crests and multiple eyes. You have no authority here, human. The Kreller Union is a sovereign power. We will not submit to your threats. This isn't a threat, Premier. It's a statement of fact. You broke the rules. Now you face the consequences. 6 hours. She terminated the transmission. Commander Hayes, now her permanent tactical officer, pulled up battle projections. Admiral, if they fight, this could get ugly. The Kreller fleet is concentrated around their homeworld. Urban combat. High civilian casualties potential. Then we make it clear that we're not interested in killing civilians. Target their military infrastructure, shipyards, command bunkers, orbital platforms. We dismantle their capacity to wage war, but we leave their cities intact. And if they use human shields, put military installations inside civilian centers. Caitlin thought about that, about the terrible choices that warfare forced, about the difference between collateral damage and deliberate targeting. Then we adjust our tactics. Precision strikes, infiltration teams, whatever it takes to minimize civilian casualties while still neutralizing the threat. We're not the Vakrin commander, but don't crack planets because it's convenient. The 6 hours passed. The Kreller Premier responded with defiance. We will not surrender. The Kreller Union bows to no one. Caitlin gave the order. Execute Operation Scalpel. What followed was 6 days of the most precise military campaign in galactic history. Human ships didn't bombard from orbit. Instead, special operations teams infiltrated Kreller space. They disabled military facilities with surgical precision, used cyber warfare to shut down command networks, deployed non-lethal weapons where possible. When they had to kill, they killed soldiers, not civilians. The Kreller fought back hard. Their fleet engaged human ships in a dozen skirmishes. They were brave, determined, well-trained, but they were fighting an enemy that had spent 40 years preparing for total war while pretending to be peaceful traders. By day 3, half the Kreller fleet was destroyed. By day 5, their military infrastructure was in ruins. On day 6, Caitlin gave the final ultimatum. Premier, your military is destroyed. Your fleet is scattered. You have no capacity to continue this war. Surrender now or we move to the next phase. I know what next phase. She pulled up tactical data, showed the Kreller food production facilities, water treatment plants, power generation infrastructure, the civilian system that kept 60 billion people alive. We blockade your worlds. Nothing comes in. Nothing goes out. Your people start starving in 3 weeks, dying of thirst in 2. We don't fire a single shot at civilians, but they die anyway because their government refuses to accept responsibility for war crimes. The horror in the Premier's multiple eyes was evident. That's murder. No, Premier, that's deterrence. That's showing you the cost of breaking the rules. You want to see your people die, keep refusing. You want them to leave, surrender. It's very simple. You're monsters. No, we're guardians. There's a difference. Monsters would have cracked your home world from orbit. We're giving you a choice. Make it. The Kreller Union surrendered 12 hours later. The aftermath was carefully managed. The Kreller government was dissolved. Elections were held under neutral supervision. Human observers ensured compliance. The new government signed a binding treaty accepting permanent monitoring of their military. And then came the part that shocked the galaxy. Humanity helped them rebuild. Medical ships arrived to treat the wounded. Engineers restored damaged infrastructure. Food shipments came from Earth to replace depleted supplies. It was the same playbook they'd used with the Vakrin scaled up to 60 billion people. The Galactic Council convened in emergency session. Arbiter Kellarn, the same insectoid diplomat who'd protested the Sigma-7 strike, addressed the assembly. The Terran Protectorate has acted without council authorization. They have violated sovereign space. They have engaged in military action against a member species. This cannot be tolerated. Caitlin had been expecting this. She'd declined their invitation to attend in person. Instead, she sent a recorded message. Arbiter Kellarn, honored delegates, you're right. We acted without your authorization. We violated Kreller sovereignty. We engaged in military action. She paused for effect. We also stopped a biological weapons attack. We neutralized a government that murdered 300 civilians and planned to do it again. We did in 6 days what your council would have spent 6 years debating. On the screen, she leaned forward. Here's what you need to understand. Humanity isn't asking your permission anymore. We tried that 45 years ago. We followed every rule. We trusted that the council would enforce the conventions it created. And when the Vakrin massacred 7.1 billion of our people, you gave us sanctions and strongly worded letters. Never again. We are withdrawing from the Galactic Council effective immediately. We will no longer participate in your debates or respect your authority. Instead, we are establishing the Terran Protectorate Force as an independent entity. We will enforce the Galactic conventions you wrote but refuse to back up. We will defend any species attacked in violation of those rules, and we will ask nothing in return. The council chamber erupted in shouting. Caitlin's recorded message continued calmly. No tribute, no territory, no political favors. This is responsibility, not transaction. We're not conquerors. We're not empire builders. We're guardians. We're the species that learned the hard way what happens when rules have no teeth, when civilization is just words on paper, when the strong can prey on the weak without consequence. She stood. You have a choice, delegates. Accept that someone is finally enforcing your own conventions, or try to stop us, but understand this: we built weapons that could destroy suns, crack planets, end civilizations, and we choose not to use them. That restraint, that deliberate choice, is what makes us guardians instead of tyrants. Remember that before you decide where the threat. The transmission ended. The council voted. 63 species supported humanity's actions. 23 opposed. 3 abstained. It wasn't unanimous, but it was enough. The Terran Protectorate Force was officially recognized as an independent enforcement entity, with all the authority and autonomy that entailed. 10 years after New Horizon, Caitlin stood at a memorial service in neutral space. The monument was simple: a black stone obelisk floating in the void, held in place by gravity generators. On its surface, over 7 billion names. Every human who died in the Vakrin War. Jack Mercer, Emily Mercer, Emma Mercer, age 6, Lucas Mercer, age 9, Captain Elena Reeves. 300,000 medical personnel killed by biological weapons. 5 billion more from the 40 missile strike. Military casualties from the war, 100 million. All of them. Every single name carved into stone that would float here for eternity. A reminder of what was lost, of what was defended, of why the rules mattered. Representatives from 89 species attended, including Vakrin, including Kreller. A Vakrin elder approached Caitlin. His bioluminescence was muted respect for the dead. Admiral Mercer, I wanted to thank you. For what? For destroying our world but giving us a future. My grandchildren attend the university you built on the ruins of our military academy. They're learning medicine, engineering, art, things that build instead of destroy. He paused. You could have exterminated us. You had the power and the justification. Instead, you showed us that strength and mercy can coexist. That's a gift beyond price. After he left, Caitlin stood alone with the memorial. She thought about the last 10 years, about the 43 conflicts the Protectorate had resolved, about the species that had learned that breaking the rules had consequences, about the former enemies who'd become allies, about Kelris, the young Vakrian who'd survived Sigma 7, who now served on the Valiant as a cultural liaison officer, who taught young human officers about Vakrian perspectives and young Vakrian officers about human tactics, who embodied the future Caitlin was trying to build, a future where strength and compassion weren't opposites, where guardians remembered what it meant to be wolves because they'd been wolves, where choosing restraint over destruction was made consciously, deliberately, every single day. Her communicator chimed. Commander Hayes. Admiral, we have a situation. Unknown species has attacked the Narn colony. Early reports suggest they are using plasma bombs in violation of Convention 8. Civilian casualties estimated in the thousands. Caitlin took one last look at the memorial, at Jack's name carved in stone alongside 7 billion others. Prep the fleet commander. How long until we can jump? 20 minutes, Admiral. Make it 15. And Hayes, by the book engagement, when the threat, we minimize civilian casualties, and if they surrender, we accept it. Understood? Understood, Admiral, by the book. She started walking toward her shuttle. Behind her, the memorial floated in eternal silence, a reminder of the cost of peace, of the price of protection, of the debt that could never be fully repaid. Hayes, one more thing. After we neutralize the threat, start organizing humanitarian aid. Medical teams, food supplies, engineering support. If we're fighting to protect people, we don't stop protecting them when the shooting ends. Yes, Admiral. Though I should mention the Galactic Council is probably going to complain about us acting without authorization again. Let them complain. We're not guardians because it's popular. We're guardians because it's necessary. The shuttle lifted off. Through the viewport, she could see the memorial growing smaller. 7 billion names, 7 billion reasons to never let it happen again. The Protectorate fleet was waiting. 200 ships, each one crewed by humans who remembered New Horizon, who understood what failure meant, who had chosen to be guardians instead of conquerors. Fleet status, she asked as she stepped onto the Valiant's bridge. All ships ready, Admiral, Hayes reported. Course plotted, weapons systems nominal. We can jump on your order. Caitlin settled into her command chair, looked at the faces of her bridge crew, young and old, veterans and recruits, all of them united by purpose. Before we jump, she said, I want everyone to understand what we're doing here. We're not going to conquer. We're not going to occupy. We're not going to force our way of life on anyone. We're going to stop an atrocity and then we're going to help the victims rebuild. She paused. Some of you are too young to remember New Horizon, but I remember. I remember watching my brother's world die while I followed rules that the enemy ignored. I remember feeling helpless, powerless, watching genocide happen in real time and being unable to stop it because we weren't in position, weren't prepared, weren't willing to do what was necessary. Her voice hardened. We are never going to feel that way again. We are never going to watch helplessly while civilians die because we built the power to stop it. We trained for decades. We prepared. And now when someone breaks the rules, when someone decides that civilian lives don't matter, they don't face empty words and meaningless sanctions. They face us. She looked around the bridge, saw determination in every face. But power isn't enough. What makes us guardians instead of tyrants is that we choose to use that power justly. We choose to minimize casualties. We choose to offer mercy to defeated enemies. We choose to rebuild instead of just destroy. Making that choice, making it consciously every single day, is what civilization actually means. Lieutenant Bridget O'Connor, young eager born 5 years after New Horizon, raised her hand hesitantly. Admiral, permission to ask a question. Granted. Ma'am, what happens when a generation grows up who didn't see New Horizon, who don't understand why we did what we did? How do we make sure they remember? It was a good question, maybe the most important question. Caitlin gestured to the memorial still visible through the viewport. We tell them stories, Lieutenant. We show them that monument. We make sure they understand the price of peace, the cost of protection. We teach them that power without responsibility is tyranny, that strength without wisdom is destruction, that the ability to destroy everything means nothing unless you have the courage to destroy nothing. She stood, and most importantly, we teach them about choice. Every day we choose mercy over revenge, choose protection over conquest, choose to be guardians instead of monsters. As long as we keep making that choice, as long as we remember why it matters, we honor the dead, we justify their sacrifice, we give meaning to their loss. The bridge was silent. All ships, Caitlin broadcast to the fleet. This is Admiral Mercer. We jump in 60 seconds. Remember who we are. Remember why we fight. We protect the innocent. We enforce the rules that keep civilization civilized. We ensure that no species ever has to watch helplessly while their families die. She paused, then we are the guardians. We remember what wolves look like because we were wolves. We remember what it means to lose everything. And we will do whatever it takes to make sure no one else has to learn those lessons the way we did. 30 seconds to jump. Caitlin sat back in her command chair, looked at the tactical displays showing the Narn colony, showing the attack in progress, showing people dying because someone had decided the rules didn't apply. Admiral, Hayes said quietly, you know that we might have to do terrible things again, that saving people sometimes means killing people. I know, and you can live with that. Caitlin thought about Jack, about Emma and Lucas, about all the names on that memorial, about the choice between being strong enough to destroy everything and wise enough to preserve anything.
I can live with making hard choices, Commander, because the alternative is watching good people die while we debate the morality of action. I've done that. Never again. 10 seconds. The fleet aligned, 200 ships in perfect synchronization.
Part of a larger force, 5,000 ships across the galaxy, all dedicated to a single purpose, built from tragedy, forged in grief, tempered by the conscious choice to be guardians instead of tyrants. Jump! Space twisted. The fleet vanished into hyperspace, racing toward another crisis, another atrocity, another chance to prove that the rules mattered because someone was finally willing to enforce them. Behind them, the memorial remained, 7 billion names floating in eternal vigil, a reminder of what was lost and a promise of what was protected. Admiral Caitlin Mercer stood on the observation deck of the UESS Valiant, watching Earth turn slowly beneath her. She was 55 years old now. Gray streaked through her auburn hair. Lines around her eyes told stories of stress and sleepless nights and decisions that would haunt her forever. But she was still here, still serving, still making the hard choices. The Terran Protectorate Force had grown beyond anything she'd imagined 20 years ago. 5,000 ships, personnel from 30 different species, bases in every major sector, a logistical network that could respond to crises within hours. They'd resolved 43 conflicts in 20 years, stopped 6 attempted genocides, intercepted 12 planet cracker deployments, prevented the use of biological weapons 37 times. The galaxy was safer, measurably, objectively safer. And the cost? Caitlin pulled up the casualty reports. 20 years of enforcement operations, 20 years of combat, 20 years of putting guardians between civilians and violence. 17,000 Protectorate personnel killed in action, 46,000 wounded, 112 ships lost, and on the other side, enemies killed infrastructure, destroyed governments overthrown. The numbers were staggering. Necessary perhaps, but still staggering. She thought about Sigma 7 sometimes. 3,000 cadets dead in 17 seconds. She'd ordered that strike, executed it, never apologized for it, because apologizing would mean admitting it was wrong. And she couldn't admit that, not when the alternative had been letting them graduate, become commanders, potentially kill more humans. The calculus was cold, but clear. 3,000 versus potentially millions. That didn't make it right, but it made it necessary. Admiral Lieutenant O'Connor approached, 25 years old now, bright, eager, everything Caitlin had been at that age before New Horizon had taught her what war actually meant. The delegation from Vakrian Prime has arrived. They're requesting a meeting. Show them to conference room 3. I'll be there in 5 minutes. After O'Connor left, Caitlin took one last look at Earth. Home. The planet that had given birth to a species crazy enough to build sun killers and wise enough not to use them. The conference room held a delegation of 7 Vakrians. 5 of them were government officials. 2 wore military uniforms. One of the military officers was Kelris. She'd grown in 15 years. Her crystalline skin had deepened in color, a sign of maturity in Vakrian biology. Her bioluminescence patterns were confident assured. She carried herself with the bearing of someone who'd earned their rank through merit. Admiral Mercer, Kelry said formally. On behalf of the Vakrian Republic, I bring greetings and a proposal. I'm listening. The senior government official, Prime Minister Jekan, who'd replaced the previous government after the war, leaned forward. Admiral, the Vakrian Republic wishes to formally join the Terran Protectorate Force as a full member species, not as subjects, not as clients, as equal partners in the mission of galactic peacekeeping. Caitlin kept her expression neutral. That's a significant proposal, Prime Minister. Why now? Because in 20 years you've proven that the Protectorate isn't about human domination. It's about shared responsibility for maintaining civilized behavior. You've defended Vakrian interests 3 times in the past decade. You've asked nothing in return. You've kept your promise to be guardians, not conquerors. He gestured to Kelrys. Commander Kelrys has served with distinction in your forces for 15 years. She's shown us that former enemies can become partners, that the cycle of violence can be broken. We want to be part of that, to contribute ships, personnel, resources, to share the burden of protection. Caitlin looked at Kelrys. Commander, do you support this? With all my heart, Admiral. I've learned so much from you, from your people, not just tactics and strategy, but philosophy. The wisdom of restraint, the courage of mercy, the understanding that true strength is knowing you could destroy everything in choosing not to. She stood at attention. I want my people to learn those lessons too, to become guardians alongside humans, to prove that we've evolved beyond the species that cracked new horizon, that we can be better. Caitlin was silent for a long moment. She thought about the easy answer, the safe answer. No, you murdered billions of us. You can never be trusted again. Then she thought about what Admiral Reeves would have said, about giving people chances to be better, about believing in redemption. On one condition, Caitlin finally said, name it. The first Vakrian unit deployed by the Protectorate will be stationed at the New Horizon Memorial. They'll stand guard over the names of the people your previous government killed. Every Vakrian officer will spend 1 month there reading those names, understanding what their species did, remembering. Prime Minister Jekan's bioluminescence flickered, shame, acceptance, understanding. Agreed. We will remember. We will honor them by being better than what we were. Then welcome to the Protectorate, Prime Minister. We'll begin integration protocols immediately. Commander Kelrys, you'll be in charge of training Vakrian personnel in Protectorate doctrine. After the delegation left, Caitlin sat alone in the conference room. Hayes entered without knocking. He had that privilege, after 20 years of serving as her right hand. You really think this is a good idea, trusting the Vakrians? No, but I think it's necessary. We can't be the only guardians forever, Garrison. Eventually we'll need allies, partners, other species who understand what we're trying to build. And if they betray us, if they learn our tactics and use them against us, then we'll deal with it. But I'd rather take that risk than spend the next century as a paranoid empire suspecting everyone, trusting no one. That's not guardianship, that's tyranny. She stood, walked to the viewport. Besides, Kelrys earned my trust. 15 years of service, 3 combat deployments. She saved human lives. If we can't believe in redemption after that, then what was the point of any of this? The memorial service for the 20th anniversary of New Horizon was the largest gathering in galactic history. Representatives from 117 species attended. The memorial had grown. The original obelisk remained, but around it, other monuments had been added for other massacres, other genocides, other moments when civilization had failed and guardians had been needed. Caitlin gave the keynote address. She stood before billions watching across the galaxy and told them the truth. 20 years ago, my brother died, his wife, his children. 7 billion people died in the Vakrin War because they trusted that the rules would protect them, because they believed that civilization meant something. They were wrong, but only because we let them be wrong. Because we wrote rules and didn't enforce them. Because we valued peace over justice. Because we believed that words on paper could stop violence. She gestured to the memorial. These 7 billion names are our shame. our failure, our reminder that civilization doesn't maintain itself, that peace isn't the absence of conflict, it's the active choice to resolve conflict without atrocity, and making that choice only matters if someone is willing to enforce it. The Terran Protectorate force isn't perfect. We've made mistakes, we've killed people who might have been redeemed, we've used force when maybe diplomacy could have worked. We carry the weight of those decisions every day. But we've also stopped 43 conflicts from becoming genocides. We've saved billions of lives. We've shown the galaxy that the rules matter because someone will enforce them. Not with empty words, not with meaningless sanctions, with actual tangible consequences. She paused. And we've shown that enforcement doesn't require becoming monsters, that you can be strong and merciful, powerful and restrained, that you can build weapons capable of destroying suns and choose never to use them. Making that choice, making it consciously every single day is what civilization means. Not laws, not conventions, not words on paper. The choice, made deliberately with full understanding of the consequences. My brother Jack used to tell me that I couldn't save the whole galaxy. He was right, I can't. We can't. But we can create a galaxy where people don't need saving, where the rules actually protect them, where breaking those rules costs so much that no one dares try. She looked directly into the cameras. We are the guardians. We remember what wolves look like because we were wolves. We remember what it means to watch helplessly while your family dies. And we will do whatever it takes to make sure no one else has to learn those lessons the way we did. We don't ask for thanks. We don't ask for tribute. We ask only that you remember. Remember these names. Remember what happened when civilization failed. And remember that it will never happen again. Not while we stand watch. Not while we make the hard choices. Not while we choose to be guardians instead of tyrants. That is our promise. Carved in stone, written in blood, enforced with steel and determination, and the wisdom to know when not to pull the trigger. We are the guardians, and the call continues. 1 month later, Caitlin received a priority transmission. Unknown species attacking a trade convoy in the outer rim, using weapons that might violate Convention 14. Casualties unknown but estimated in the hundreds. She looked at the message, at the coordinates, at the distance. It would take 12 hours to get there. 12 hours during which people might be dying, might be suffering, might be wondering if anyone cared enough to help. Garrison prepped the fleet. How many ships, Admiral? All of them. If we're going to make a statement, let's make it loud. 20 minutes later, 5,000 ships jumped to hyperspace, racing toward another crisis, another atrocity. Another chance to prove that the rules mattered. That civilization was more than words. That someone, humanity, the Protectorate, the Guardians, was actually willing to stand between the innocent and violence. Caitlin sat in her command chair and thought about Jack, about Emma and Lucas, about all the names on that memorial, about the debt that could never be repaid, only honored through service. Admiral O'Connor asked quietly, "Do you ever wonder if we'll succeed, if we can actually make the galaxy safe?" "Every day, Lieutenant. And I think about something my brother told me 20 years ago. He said I couldn't save the whole galaxy. But he was wrong about one thing." "What's that?" "I can try, we can try, and as long as we keep trying, as long as we keep making the choice between power and mercy, as long as we remember why it matters, then maybe, just maybe, we honor the dead. We justify their sacrifice. We give meaning to their loss." She looked at the young officer. "That's all we can do, Lieutenant. Try, choose, remember, and hope that it's enough." The fleet continued through hyperspace. 5,000 ships, dozens of species, united by purpose, bound by the conscious choice to be guardians instead of monsters. Behind them, Earth turned in its orbit, the home world of a species that had learned the hardest lesson in galactic history, that civilization was fragile, that rules required enforcement, that the only thing standing between peace and atrocity was the willingness to make terrible choices and live with the consequences. Ahead of them, unknown enemies, unknown challenges, Unknown crises that would require the same cold calculation, the same terrible arithmetic, the same choice between what was easy and what was right. And in between, Caitlin Mercer, age 55, admiral, guardian, someone who remembered what it meant to lose everything and refused to let anyone else suffer the same fate. The call continued. It always would, because some choices were too important to stop making, and some debts were too sacred to ever stop paying. The Helios platforms still orbited 7 human worlds, unused, unneeded since Vakrin Prime. A reminder that true power wasn't the ability to destroy, it was the wisdom to choose not to. That choice made 20 years ago over a dying world called New Horizon reaffirmed every day, since was humanity's true legacy. Not guardianship, but the courage to choose it.